most ardent defender of Boris Johnson since he became Prime Minister, he also said that he should go as well. So it was clearly just unsustainable, and I'm sure within the party and within the cabinet, yes, there will be an awful lot of belief that he has realised what was being obvious to everyone that it's
one moment, because we're going to be joining viewers across the country in a moment. Sebastian Page from the FT there. We are, of course, live in Downing Street at the moment.
Now time for a BBC News special.
This is Geetha Gurumurthy live in Downing Street for BBC News, BBC World and BBC One viewers who are just joining us. Chris Mason, the BBC political editor, has confirmed that Boris Johnson is going to step down. We expect a statement from the Prime Minister today. He will serve as Prime Minister until a successor is elected in the autumn, if the Conservative Party members, of course, and the MPs allow him to stay on until the autumn. Of course, there needs to be now a Conservative Party election for the new leader. It's expected there will be a very big field. We saw a letter from Nadeem Zahawi published on Twitter today calling for the Prime Minister to step down. Boris Johnson has seen the scale of opposition against him, and he has now agreed to resign. Well, of course, it had been incredibly febrile in the last 24 hours, and it was clear that this was only moving in one direction. That came after a very senior Foreign Office official contradicted the Prime Minister, saying effectively we have been dishonest about a very serious sexual assault allegation against a member of the Prime Minister's government. That whole scandal was just the latest in a stream of scandals that has dogged the Prime Minister after Partygate. Criticism about his own sense of honesty and integrity, part of the criticism about his character, something that even his allies accepted, couldn't be fixed by new policy announcements, arguments over tax, arguments about how to address very urgent questions on the cost of living that are only set to escalate in the next few months, and a real sense of policy drift with the Conservative government, as Boris Johnson has been buffeted over and over again by crises seem to be of his own making. Well, of course, we have had a stream of resignations, over 50, 54, 55 resignations or more, and of course we've also had the interventions today from Nadeem Zahawi, who has described himself as a friend of 30 years, saying that he privately counselled the Prime Minister to step down yesterday, but today has gone public with that call, and Michelle Donnellan, the Education Minister, newly appointed only yesterday, again resigned. It looks like critics of the Conservative Party in the opposition, of course, the whole party, the whole Tory party, has been corrupted by what is going on by the leadership of Boris Johnson. We're expecting, though, now the Prime Minister to come out at some point here in Downing Street and make a statement. It's been reported, we can't confirm it, that the Prime Minister spoke to Graham Brady, who is the chairman of the Night Review Backbench Committee, and confirmed that he had pondered events and realised basically that the game was up. And that became apparent because with the stream of resignations, the stream of withdrawal of support from the backbenchers, it was clear that Boris Johnson basically did not have the confidence in his own party. And although we don't have a written constitution, no Prime Minister can stay in office when they cannot get the full backing of their party, because they can't get the backing of Parliament. We also heard a number of criticisms from former ministers today, saying they feared this was Trump-style challenge to the Constitution, someone trying to stay in office beyond the time that they had any legitimacy to do so. Those are very, very serious charges. Some people even questioning whether Boris Johnson's judgment was completely sound, given the fact that he had not seen the scale of opposition and stepped down the way. Well, it seems that today, this morning, that moment has finally come. This is the man, of course, who delivered Brexit in this country, came into power under extraordinary circumstances. Brexit is still a very divisive question. The cost of living, the war in Ukraine, the pandemic have all been huge issues for Boris Johnson to deal with. There's been a lot of controversy around many of his judgments, even on some of these very, very big questions. Of course, as part of Brexit, the Northern Ireland question, the Northern Ireland Protocol, the breaking of international law, the alienating of EU allies on the latest manoeuvres around the protocol has been another area that's been very, very fractious. What happens to all that now will, of course, rest on who takes over the Conservative Party. The party have been split by the Remain Brexit factions. We do not know ultimately who's going to take over, who's going to be someone who's either of those roles, whether that is still a key concern, whether in fact it would be someone like Jeremy Hunt who's not served, or Tom Tugendhat who's not served as a cabinet minister, or whether it could be one of the big names in the government who has actually been part of the Boris Johnson administration, whether that is seen as an advantage or whether that's seen as a problem. Well, let's just try and work out what this big change that we're going to see in Downing Street now means for Northern Ireland, for the whole integrity, of course, of the United Kingdom. Chris Page, our Ireland correspondent, is with me. Chris, just tell us, what is your sense, first of all, of the breaking news that Boris Johnson is now going to resign as Prime Minister?
Okay, so where are we going?
Yeah. Is that a remote speak? Dan. Got 8?
Yeah, took a long while.
You have my back. Do you need a microphone?
Case right up until late May. Finally released the policy, released the board, and finally handed out their last well.
Is this going to stay up for a while?
Yes.
Ordering 60 of it on Amazon Prime to get it delivered by 1 p.m. Yeah. A whole truck filled with. Do you have anything around the basket yet?
Are we ready? They're just going to come to me versus I'm throwing them.
What Neil's doing that time of How is it yours? I will arrange it.
Okay, Chris Page, thank you very much. We're here in Downing Street with the breaking news. Boris Johnson is now going to resign as Prime Minister after facing a huge internal. Let's go to our correspondent, who is on College Green. He's got Steve Baker.
I asked him about so you're staying again until later end. You want to get to know him? So in which case?
Lewis resigning.
Well, who's the bill coming?
Brandon Lewis resigned as well. We heard Hilton saying in those security council, this is the Home Secretary, who was in the role to enhance the security. Still a security apparatus, he didn't want to leave the post because of that. And we heard that it's a horrible it's devastating that man who's only been in the job of Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, in the last 48 hours, telling the Prime Minister, imploring the Prime Minister to leave the position. Michelle Donovan as well, the Education Secretary, is doing exactly the same. We should start talking about who the next leader is. And that is doing the British Secretary playing his role. I think the Prime Minister will understand, finally realise the game is up, and as we understand now, is preparing.
James Forsyth said
drafted, and we will see that resignation mode within it.
Can I just put that next to you?
I'm sure we're live.
Are you live? Okay, cool. I'm just going to move this, I think, to here. Oh yeah, you. Is this all right? I'll wait. Anyone with a GoPro? I don't have a GoPro. I just need that screw that just goes underneath. Apparently, I forgot that. You know that screw that goes in there. Do you have the tail one?
Yeah, oh, they're trying to just
I'll just have a look. Let's talk about this then. Yes, it's not the end of the world.
To ask Peter if he's standing.
Are you? Is John Maguire asking him whether he's standing? Is John going to ask Baker whether he's going to stand for his leadership? He needs to ask now, yeah. I've got it. Can you hear this? Yeah, have we got output? Yeah, we can hear.
Yeah, no, I'm going to listen to it.
push on that? How much support has he got?
But Thanos, whatever the stripes of the next government and the next leadership here in the United Kingdom, we know that there are problems and concerns about political paralysis throughout all the major players in Europe at the moment. When you look at Mario Draghi, we have to have a government in Italy by the middle of next year. That would be quite an extraordinary situation if we don't see a resurgence of the far-right leftists. We know that in France, Macron is looking at how he can have some form of cohesive government. Olaf Scholz has got a cost of living crisis now. You can see the trade deficit in Germany as well, and of course the situation in the United Kingdom. No matter who's in charge in these 14 countries in Europe, are we in for a period of not only political but also economic consolidation?
Now one's horrible.
Is there any way I could get a clean feed that doesn't have a studio so I can hear the interviews? Graham? Could you ask the studio if I can get a clean feed without the director so I can actually listen to the interview? Because I suspect at some point we're going to be talking about what we said in the interview. Thank you.
Yeah, you want to see that.
John Maguire, thanks very much indeed there. John Maguire with Steve Baker confirming his interest in standing for the leadership. I'm joined by Nick Eardley, who's going to join in a moment. I just want to bring you the reaction from the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, who said on Twitter that the Conservatives have overseen 12 years of economic stagnation, finding public services policies. We don't need to change the Tory at the top. We need a proper change of government. We need a fresh start for Britain. He says it is good news for the country that Boris Johnson has resigned as Prime Minister. It should have happened long ago. He was always unfit for office. He's been responsible for lies, scandal and fraud on an industrial scale. All those who have been complicit should be utterly ashamed. He goes on, the Tory party will inflict chaos upon the country during the worst cost of living crisis in decades, and they cannot now pretend that they're the ones to sort it out. They've been about for 12 years. The damage they've done is profound. Economic stagnation, declining public services, empty policies, enough is enough. We don't change the Tory at the top, we need a proper change of government. Nick Eardley is with me now. Just to confirm earlier, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister,
A lot of the government spend
Boris Johnson really actually tell us all about resigning and making the Conservative government happening already buzzing already with Conservative now because of that level of Boris Johnson last night he wanted to stay. was to see more people into senior roles vacant. He was pushed over the edge this morning by Nadine Zahawi, the new Chancellor, a man in post for just over a day, saying that he needs to change his mind on where he needs to go. Michelle Donnelly, the Education Secretary, for just over a day, saying that she resigned, that she thinks he needs to go. Boris Johnson did not make this policy. Those that walk in the most remarkable circumstances, writing to many people was on the wall when Rishi Sunak, Sajid, Javid walked out on Tuesday. Boris Johnson is doing everything he can to try and cling on, but now it's game over, and he's going to resign or announce his resignation in the next month.
Within the party, within the government, within the ranks of the Westminster as well, but also in the hearts and minds of voters. You've got to remember that Boris Johnson,
I think that's why this position was untenable for the Prime Minister. It wasn't like he could just change a policy. It wasn't like he could just tweak a few of his ideas to win his MPs over. This was about him. It reached a point where his party had turned en masse and decided he wasn't going to change behaviour. So yes, Chris Pincher row has been huge. Chris Pincher, of course, resigned his deputy last week. Boris Johnson denied that he knew about any allegations against him. His team denied that he knew about any allegations against Mr. Pincher until their story gradually unravelled. It's more than that. It's the by-election losses 8 weeks ago. It's the resignation of Lord Guy. It's party leader. All of these things. Owen Patterson. All of these things have had a humorous effect on the Prime Minister's standing in the whole party, and the Chris Pincher row has been run with the solid.
Peter Sturgeon has also tweeted just to say there will be a widespread sense of relief that the chaos of the last few days, indeed months, will come to an end. The notion of Boris Johnson staying on as Prime Minister until autumn seems far from ideal and surely not sustainable. She says Boris Johnson is always manifestly unfit to be Prime Minister, and the Tories should never have elected a leader who sustained him in office for as long as they have. Problems run much deeper than one individual. The Westminster system is broken, or the democratic deficit inherent in the Westminster government doesn't get fixed and changed in the cabinet. None of the alternative Tory PMs will ever be elected as public constituents. It's hard to see what those hard phrases supporting Labour off that is Peter Sturgeon. Another reaction of relief, but of course not criticism as a result.
Very interesting what is ahead if and when we see Boris Johnson say, talk about the election process really
They are all complicit.
One Tory MP said to me this morning, this is going to divide the party dramatically. There were warnings on the record yesterday from the allies, Conor Burns, who's the other element. He was saying that this is going to be a bloodbath. There are so many different views on what the party should do next, that it's going to be extremely damaging. I have such a long list of people who I could stand to be the next Tory leader. Well, it's really interesting because they're from different wings of the party. Potentially, none of these are working things. Lots of them Rishi Sunak, Sajid, Jeremy Hunt, Lebedev, Steve Baker. The last two the One Nation centre, a lot of them were sceptical about Brexit over Rishi Sunak this morning leaving his house. The big question we're going to pose in the next few hours is whether he wants to move into number 10, having only moved out of number 11 a couple of days ago. Suella Babylon there as well. She said she was going to stand.
I'll go downstairs. He didn't go back down to the
Wife's a multi-million British Prime Minister, along with the Prime Minister. So look, I mean, I think Rishi Sunak will be weighing that up this morning. I've asked some people quite close to him whether it's likely that he will stand. The idea at the moment that Boris Johnson's going to outline to us at some point in the next few hours is that it's a matter of weeks and months before the new Prime Minister is decided on. I don't think some Tory people is by spoken to some by text in the last 20 minutes or so who are saying the Prime Minister needs to go now. Boris Johnson is waiting office until his successor is chosen. There'll be a big row over that in the next few hours. And all of those potential leadership candidates will be weighing up their options. When do they report?
Sorry.
So that was the name that was being mentioned yesterday.
So we've got.
Did very well last time.
Can I just do that? I mean, this is going to be everything.
But that is something that's been discussed.
Well, it will be.
Of course, I think bringing Brexit, and he is saying evict today or he'll cause carnage. Now he's spent time and will try to stay. No dignity, no interim, while Rishi becomes Raab should be interim Prime Minister by the evening. So there is a question about whether Boris Johnson can override the debt.
Yes, there are some Tory MPs who are going to be waiting for Prime Minister to go now. The level of bad blood over the last few hours is so significant that it will be the Prime Minister simply can't hold on for a few more days, weeks or months.
And the question about that is quite about the absolutely unprecedented political crisis with ministers cabinet questions about whether Boris Johnson really is okay. And also, somebody was a war in Ukraine, got a real economic crisis for millions of people. You need somebody in charge, in office, in power, that you will start trying to build trust.
You're absolutely right. Boris Johnson was planning to do some pretty radical things with tax cuts in the next few weeks. We heard his team talk about that yesterday with the new Chancellor and Javid. I think some Tory MPs will be slightly nervous about putting Boris Johnson in office to do things that they might not be comfortable. Now look, this isn't necessarily a majority view. I'm giving you a snapshot of things on whether or not he can stay into office for the next week. There is a sense of some including some resign.
Thank you, man. Well done.
Why would you do that? Why would you suggest that?
Just send a third photographer to having been agreed to photograph the action of his speech. Okay. But no one's interested yet.
They know he's resigning, but no one knows when. The other thing is, the reason they brought out the next term is the fund.
Yeah, they always do.
It's just like side session.
Yeah, look, I mean,
And also when they
public opinion, the big fear of Tory MPs had yesterday was the public's turned against the Prime Minister, not just Tory MPs. Those two dialogues earlier this morning, that's now suggest.
You won't have covered it in the job looks like
So that's one element. And represent parties win back in terms of the Prime Minister, expect to have any sort of legacy, to not be the Prime Minister. Obviously he's got the legacy of Brexit, which he's clearly very proud of. There is a bit of a sense, I think, that he will want to do something in the next few weeks, that he's not just remembered the scandals that have now coached him for office. I'm not sure that whether there's going to be anything. Really good question. She's been very quiet over the last couple of days. She's away and I didn't see it at the conference. My understanding yesterday is that she didn't think it was time to flounce out of the cabinet as someone put it to me, that she thought it was the time to really sort this out. Similar to what Nelson was about with Ben Wallace this morning. But she'll be weighing that out, I suspect, this morning. Whether she decides it's time to go to the leadership. One of the interesting things is when I was chatting to Keir this morning, a lot of them were saying that they think for those entities who didn't resign, stayed in their jobs despite everything. They've been tainted by Boris Johnson. Frankly,
Honestly, the best.
The Prime Minister before, sir?
Of United
Is this a humiliation?
a significant amount of time.
Can you last until the autumn?
Matt Rinwick texted me at 9:18
New leader, new agenda.
Let me speak with we don't know who the new leader is going to be. We don't know what decide our priorities and move on to the next. what did they say?
Boris Johnson will only vote for someone who promises the tax cuts. Civics want someone who says to spend more and so on for the cost of living crisis. All parties are absolutely all of that wondering what they are doing, what they want to do. That's what they're doing this afternoon. They decide who they want to do. A big debate.
Some of where we are is 10 o'clock now here on Peace welcoming all of those around the world. As it is confirmed that Boris Johnson, Prime Minister, is going to resign, having faced huge onslaught of a wave of protest, concerns that he was perhaps threatening the unwritten constitution by staying on, despite clearly having lost confidence of the Conservative Party, no longer able to command Parliament under those circumstances. It's really had no choice but to step down. The fear that he's going to try to cling on even longer, forcing a backbench vote, voting with confidence and finally force him out. And a lot of criticism about perhaps his pseudo-influence tactics and questions about what he's done. Now finally found something that is going to step down. Let's get some more reaction. John McGuire is on.
Why can't they sit? Don't raise your voice. Stop fighting. You don't seem to have a problem. There's one problem. It's easy, right? That bloke who's here early.
That's what he said.
Can I go to with one question before we jump on this? When John Major resigned. Mark Jackson, yeah. We're also going to do a lot of work trying to rid up parliamentary on Project 4, that's still in progress.
How long have you been at this, sir?
John McGuire, thanks very much. College Green. I just want to show you a tweet from Mark Drakeford, First Minister of Wales, who has said all four nations need a stable, inclusive government to run efforts to provide the development of the right and relief from all the
What is this 5G? You can't complex 5G. Tries to. Doesn't really. My phone.
Government. Some departments back clarification is extraordinary circumstances. And actually, the calculation that may have been made in there this morning, I know you'll be talking about it here in the morning, is all sorts of people they couldn't kill the head of being closed. The level of anger against them is such it's probably best. I know we're left to turn until this will be removed. Just one other fact. My whole horse is going to tell us later he wants to stay during a reading fully MPs text us and get in touch with posting online and saying on air that they don't think that's feasible. All says that the moment in the Prime Minister 28 few applicants have been submitted names, and I suspect that his calculation might be he doesn't want to be seen as the Prime Minister. I mean, I went through the debate, obviously, and publicly, for it.
Well, yeah.
Why do you
Very well. Well, yeah. Yeah, they're not bring everything and then decide.
hard to overstate the level of despair in the Conservative Party yesterday. It's hard to overstate just how angry some MPs were with cabinet ministers that they weren't moving. We heard that speech from Sajid, and the TNT person, Sajid Javid's resignation speech by Congress, where he said not making a choice is, not moving, not doing anything is an act of choice. I think that pressure has been so significant that yesterday evening, down that door and say to the President, time's up. Now, he was planning on sticking it out. The message from Member Parliament tonight was there isn't going to be a lecture out in the street, there's a mandate from the public that they're determined to get on with. But this morning, the fact that a bunch of cabinet ministers have told the President and their resignation work, that he prepared Janet and a number of others, add into the mix this morning, Nadine Zahawi, the new Chancellor for just over a day saying that Keir had to go, the new Education Secretary for just over a day saying that Keir had to go and resign that new job she had. That has forced Boris Johnson out. He was doing everything he could last night to try and stay in there. The message we were getting overnight was that Boris Johnson had a reshuffle on the ball. He was figuring out ways to try and get his top team back operational again. So the fact that that steady stream of resignations continues means that impossible to support the That's right. Other polling say that it will be over in the autumn. The Parliament can set out what he wants to do. The Parliament will timetable something cabinet ministers were telling to do yesterday. The timetable is up to the Conservative Party. They are the ones who decide when the new leader is elected. Remember that David Cameron planned to stay in office quite a while while the new leader was elected. And then Theresa May, before that the election was pulled out, was elected in this people expected. So there will be a conversation going on right now in the Conservative Party about how quickly that process could be done. But this is it. Separate to that, and I told what's happened over the last few days. Furious at the fact that the Prime Minister tried to cling on enough. Furious that he sat out the vote last night. Furious that the allies were telling you last night that they were twitching. So angry about this that they just don't think all things are going on for a few more weeks or months. Don McGrath is the main feeling of potential Prime Minister. That won't go down well with everybody. There are some of his colleagues, the Housley, who don't rate him. But remember, he said to it that Boris Johnson was in hospital with COVID. The most likely character at the moment. Anyone else who could command support across the party where there's a big debate about political sector. It's hard to see it now. Yeah, I mean, some of them were sacked recently as well. So some of Michael Gove's key allies in number 10 weren't there anymore. But yeah, I think they're right. Michael Gove's allies of the Conservative Party, the MPs as well, are among those who said here this morning who are most furious about the idea that the PM might stay on for a few more weeks or a few more months. Yeah. Also that question of Michael Gove said won't stand. I wonder if he might just be given everything that's gone on in the last few weeks. And if he was to put it will it be on the What is it? Tax will be a debate. Tax burden at the moment, as Tory MPs describe it, makes a lot of them angry. They want to see personal tax cuts as soon as possible. I think Brexit might still feed into it, particularly issues over the protocol. Who could take that battle to Brussels as Tory MPs see it? That's the calculation they'll be having. Who can keep the union together? Big question for Scottish Tory MPs. Who does rattle through a few names? Rishi Sunak, Sajid, Javid, Jeremy Hunt, Tom Tugendhat, Suella Braverman, Steve Baker, Liz Truss. Have them all on your list today. See if anyone comes and say that.
I think we can hear one voice from the Conservative Party. Andrew Bridgen is in College Green with John Maguire. Yes, I can. Yeah. Hello, hello. I understand the importance of my role. Haven't seen him. Haven't seen him.
John, it's actually fascinating and very thoughtful.
He was coming at 10:30. Until 6.
Same Conservative Party. The reason they inherited the UK Prime Minister as well. In many ways, it's their speed in terms of directions politically as well. I hear what you're saying. But it's not the old ERG versus Remain debate anymore. And it doesn't seem to be
Guys, do you want to get a quasi-quad-tech talk? Okay, so we'll do that next. Am I talking to John on this one?
I didn't mean it.
Yeah. Where's he from again?
He wasn't even big. He wasn't even thinking about it in that context. He just dug himself a hole.
Oh, sorry.
They need bacon. That's all they need.
Yeah. I mean, presumably don't let us go down there.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm kind of surprised. Surprised Holly's not down here, actually. Holly Adams. Yeah, I'm surprised he's not sent her down.
When there's an open question.
Where is, which one is it? It's like a big one or a... It's like a lot of those screens. Let's do focus on Harry. Choose. He's just going to do carry. So what happened? She sent a message saying straight to Avenue Green. What's a park? He's on my way, yeah. So, about your message, well, I can't see you going to the door. It's going to be real tight. So you need a third person. You've got to think about Karen. Like, shoes. Exactly. That'll be doing fashion. Just bonkers. All about getting the wall.
Thanks very much, John McGuire. I just want to bring in a couple more topics. Quasi-Quatech has tweeted saying, what a depressing state of affairs. So much needless damage caused. We now need a leader as soon as practicable. Someone who can rebuild trust. Here we're coming to say that new sensible to help families. So here we're back cabinet, those outside the cabinet have certainly talked about their desire to step into that leadership race. I think it's a very wide field. Another MP, Simon Moore, has tweeted saying Boris Johnson should not be allowed to stay through to the court.
I remember rightly they bring it out.
He's saying go means go, and that concern from a number of people in the Conservative Party itself that Boris Johnson might try to hang on even for a few weeks whilst the Conservative races is clearly a lot of unease about that, probably given the way the last 24 hours has unfolded. Concerns about Boris Johnson pushed to make something try to cling on some weeks rather than triggering the general unease about whether now that he's said he's going to resign your reaction to these unfolding events. Jonathan, we are finally hearing Boris Johnson has agreed to resign. insensé, quoi. Force le gouvernement à... In terms of who decides and how it decides whether Boris Johnson does stay until the autumn or not, what's your sense on that? Is it the 1950s, this is the Conservative Party?
Sums up the morning.
Okay, Tobias. You've set yourself up for this one now, Tobias, and if you're going to have a quick process, you're going to have a very quick whittling down of a huge number of candidates. You're probably going to try and find MPs to back in as well. Who's going to be the next Prime Minister? On behalf of that.
Sorry, I left the bag over there. Sorry.
What time? Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to keep people away. No worries.
D'accord. Oui. Et là, j'ai question, est-ce que... moi, je vais... I'm going to try and down the right one. Well, if there was to be compared to but it is important to basically are they all embroiled in every decision that Boris Johnson has done? No, voilà, it's true. So it is important. It is the most important thing is that parce que c'est depuis les questions. Pardon? Ça, je...
Yeah, no, sure.
We got your laugh on there on Slack.
No, sure. My boss just messaged me saying you were just like...
That's possible. I'll see what I can find out about that as well. Ça marche, merci. Merci, what is your sense of how that leadership election will pan out?
I know I got caught out once before, by my mum having a cigarette and revived me.
a tweet from the Hofstadt, Jonathan, I don't know whether you've seen it, but it was about an hour ago. He has said Boris Johnson's reign ends in disgrace, just like his friend Donald Trump. The end of an era of transatlantic populism, let's hope so. EU-UK relations suffer hugely with Johnson's choice of Brexit, things can only get better. Of course, whoever takes on the mantle of Tory leader in the coming weeks will dictate how this country progresses with the ongoing Brexit relations. What happens with Northern Ireland Protocol, that has an impact on EU relations and the integrity of the UK.
Oh no, Jack, get down.
Jonathan, yes, thank you very much indeed. I know you were waiting for a while to kind of
With bad foot.
your time today, getting reaction, of course, all the time. John McGuire, a few minutes ago, spoke to Steve Baker on College Green, a key supporter, of course, of Boris Johnson, who's one of the court members.
Yeah.
Sorry? 11. Unpinned.
Weight since I got here this morning. All the drama. I think Anushka tweeted saying that he tweeted that he had spoken on the face.
Way on the top step.
But we've not. But are we confirming whether he has spoken? We're not. Nick Hurdley says, should we do a quick thing on Liz Truss? She's coming back. So should we do that first? What does it mean? here. No, he's here. Do I have to, like, do we know when it is? Run for the Conservative leadership. Well, he is apparently popular with the Tory basis for us. What do you know currently about her at the moment?
We've not heard anything from her in the last couple of days. That's because she's on a trip to Indonesia. I've heard the last few minutes she's coming back. She's cut that trip short and she'll be making a statement later. There's a lot of speculation that she's been working on a campaign, getting ready to launch. It sounds to me that we may well hear if Liz Truss is going to do that later today.
BBC the other side quite extraordinary here as well. I do want to talk a little bit about the timing process
do we know
context, the last two leadership contexts in the United Kingdom from the Conservative Party.
Well, look, I think we've been announcing one in 20 time actually, yeah. But always is setting up a potential successors for the Prime Minister. There have been a lot of evenings in private members' clubs in the West End of London. There have been lots of conversations in tea rooms. There is no shortage of people who are making clear to their colleagues that like Jeremy Hunt has been one who's been schmoozing a lot over the last few weeks. But as I say, Liz Truss heading back to the UK imminently. To get shortly seems to be possible.
We still don't quite know when Boris Johnson is going to come out and make a statement, if that's what he's going to do. A podium statement here actually confirming the position not have all about how long he stays here while the Conservatives run that race. Henry Hill of the Conservative home. First of all, Henry, what is your sense of the reaction across different parts of the Conservative Party to today's news?
92,000 votes, 46,000 members in the country, 66.4% of the vote, and then became the Prime Minister, and then the country becoming the Conservative election victory. But it doesn't have to take long.
We have a really long XMR cable. We need to rig up the XMR cable. We've got one that was strung together. I feel I'd be more comfortable with a non-strung together one, but it's fine. Where is the truck? Okay.
Is much of the cabinet did not act until now? Still not resolved. Are they all now very
including Michael Gove, Fox, even Pratt as well. Gove has been sacked in the last 24 hours from control of the secretary. So then it went forward to just two of six. Today, Andrew Lebedev.
What's the name? I keep on interrupting you. Space. Helen. Sorry.
And so does that mean that the leadership is more likely to go to someone like Jeremy Hunt? Going to very heavily split the Tories. Do you think they are realistic to look at the period in opposition now in order to fully reinvent themselves? Because this period has been extremely damaging. We've seen them falling behind in the polls to Labour.
An interesting relationship with Sergei Lavrov, no counterpart in Russia. There was a very uncomfortable meeting between the Chancellor and Sergei Lavrov, which had an uncertain knowledge of geography of the treaties that were in Luhansk and Donetsk, and the treaties actually in Russia as well. So not meeting Sergei Lavrov again might be quite a good risk for the Chancellor. There is another issue here as well. It's a very important point. Indonesia holding the chair of the G20, probably on Tuesday this year, a leaders meeting in Bali, of which it's been asked the question many times, will the Western leaders sit down in the same room with Vladimir Putin as well? That's a hostile issue. And you make a very important point. These are affecting international policy, the daily act of getting on with government. Let's take out about it as well. Instance tries to find those.
Okay. Henry Hill, from Conservative Home, thank you very much. Well, what is the process now? Has Boris Johnson spoken to the Queen? Our royal correspondent Nicholas Whitlock is in the newsroom. Nicholas, what's your understanding on that?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
And Nick, do you know whether there had been any conversations between Number 10 and within the Buckingham Palace staff about this whole constitutional crisis question, that whether Boris Johnson would have the authority to call an early election? Some are speculating, not being tactic. What happens when the Prime Minister clings to office but doesn't have enough support to create a government? Because it is, of course, a political decision, not one that rests with the monarchy these lines are quite complex, quite blurred.
I don't think
let's go live to the House of Commons because the government has been asked urgent questions on the functioning of government. I think Angela Rayner posed that. Let's listen to it.
That's right. Thank you.
take this back to the Prime Minister and urge an urgent resolution and inform.
The Minister will be speaking shortly.
Olivia Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Clearly, the idea of the Prime Minister continuing as a caretaker will be worrying many, many people. But it's interesting to hear from the BBC that MPs are privately briefing that they're worried about issues, maybe half-jokingly, that the PM might take us to war to avoid leaving office. What are you going to do? What is going to be done to make sure that the opposition can hold a caretaking Prime Minister who has lost the faith of the country and his own government to account?
Politics.
May I gently recommend to the Honourable Lady that she does not listen to gossip and rumour. The fact of the matter is that responsible government in this country will continue.
Mans.
Very grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with the resignation this morning of the Secretary of State for Education, following on from her entire Commons ministerial team, the Education Select Committee never even got to ask her about her plans. Mr. Speaker, it's become abundantly clear to almost the entire population that the only functioning cabinet that there's been in 10 Downing Street for months, if not for a few years, has been the drinks cabinet. So when will the remnants of this government's front bench accept that they've been in collective denial for just far too long?
Well, I think the Honourable Gentleman asked a rhetorical question, but I would say to him this, that this government will continue to function as the country would expect.
Naz Shah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Looking at many Tory MPs in the lobbies and everywhere, looking at them, I'm using this word sadness. You know something, had it not been for the fact that each and every one of them on those benches upheld and let this Prime Minister carry on, he should have resigned. He should have resigned when Partygate happened. He should have resigned when Durhamgate happened. He should have resigned when his ethics advisor resigned. He should have resigned a long, long time ago. But each and every one of them kept him here, and now they're trying to take the moral high ground that he's finally on his way out. So I will not feel sorry for him. How do we hold them to account, Mr. Speaker, when there isn't a governing government? How does the opposition hold them to account?
The people who put the Prime Minister in place are the 14 million people who voted in the general election for this Conservative Party.
Boris Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, this is one of the greatest crises any of us can remember. And in the national interest, surely, even for a short period of time, till recess, we should work across benches to sort this crisis. And I don't want any laughter here, Mr. Speaker, but I have a great deal of experience in education. There's no education minister on a short-term period. I will be very happy to help. But unpaid, Mr. Speaker, unpaid. But this, our constituents would want us across benches to work together, forget this petty politics and get this government working again.
Well, I thank the Honourable Gentleman, Mr. Speaker, but his services are not required. And the reason his services will not be required is because there are a plethora of talented and dedicated individuals on the benches behind me who will serve in this government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. For many people in Scotland, the outgoing Prime Minister is Westminster personified, backward, unfit for purpose, delusional and disgraced. And now, just like the union he is the Minister for, he is isolated, broken, bereft of ideas, and his time has come. The party is over. So can he tell me, will there be a leaving do in number 10 tonight? Because we'll be raising a drink in Coatbridge, Chrysler and Bellsill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't think there's any serious answer expected from that frivolous question.
Andy Slaughter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given a majority of government MPs now say the Prime Minister lacks the integrity and honesty required for that post, can the Minister explain what is the basis for the Prime Minister staying in post for a further 3 months?
I would recommend that the Honourable Gentleman awaits a statement which is due from the Prime Minister shortly.
Margaret Ringler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will be aware that our constituents contact us about extremely important matters, and they contact us when they've explored every other avenue to get a resolution to their problems. And we write to ministers on their behalf. And I'm extremely concerned on behalf of my constituents about what this means, not only for the casework that we have already sent to ministers, some of it of extreme importance for people's actual health and survival, but also going forward. It's untenable that the Prime Minister stays on until the autumn. Would the Minister please explain to me how it is that we can have a situation where there is no functioning government, but the Prime Minister thinks he can stay on?
Well, there is a functioning government and there's a functioning civil service who will continue to do their duty in supporting the operation and functionality of the state, as they always have done.
It's not to worry about the fact that a government elected with a majority of 82 years ago can carry on functioning because we have the civil service. But levelling up is a government priority. The bill enacting levelling up is in front of the House of Commons at the moment. If the government is functioning, can he tell us whether that committee is going ahead in 26 minutes' time?
Well, there is a Business of the House statement in the usual way, and she will be able to ask that question of the Leader of the House of Commons.
Sam Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister speaks about responsible government, but yet we've had nearly 3 years of totally irresponsible government. My constituents are suffering massively. Surely, Mr. Speaker, the moral thing to do is not to look to the Constitution, but actually go to the country, call a general election and let the people of this country decide, not just on the Prime Minister, but on the rotten lot of bankrupt government that we've had for the past 2.5 years from the last election. It's not about the Constitution, it's about what the people of this country need, and that is responsible government, and they are not going to be getting it from your side, even with a change of Prime Minister.
The business of government will continue functioning as the public would expect it to do. And I reject the characterisation that he makes, and I suspect that the vast majority of the general public in this country would also reject that characterisation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister should be making the statement in this House, frankly, not anywhere else, so that we could be able to question him about the functioning of government, and I think, Mr. Speaker, you'd prefer that as well. But let me just ask him this. There are two major crises facing the country at the moment. One is the cost of living crisis, which is facing many, many millions of families, and the other is the situation in Ukraine and across NATO. There's a real possibility that a government might have to deploy further troops in the next few months for proper reasons. A caretaker government can't do that. Simply can't. The rules forbid them from doing that. And yet, I fear that this Prime Minister, the disgraced, deselected Prime Minister, will be more dangerous in these next 3 months, if he's allowed to have another 3 months, than he's been in the last 3 years. So can he please make sure that we have a proper government soon, in other words, before the summer recess?
Well, we have a proper government, and the proper government continues. I have to say to the honourable gentleman that he talks about cost of living in Ukraine, but I have hardly heard him or his honourable colleagues speak of those subjects over the past 6 months. They have mostly been talking about personalities. So it is this government which has been getting on with the business of representing the United Kingdom in international fora and have led the way on Ukraine, and when it comes to dealing with the global cost of living crisis, have been doing that too.
Wakeford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, wow, what was that response to this urgent question? Mr. Speaker, is the Minister tired of propping up this Prime Minister and defending the indefensible? Minister, where was your letter? Did it get lost with your backbone?
I'm not answering any questions along those lines, Mr. Speaker.
We'll resign then. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today it appears a number of bill committees will be cancelled on issues of utmost importance, from national security to levelling up, as my honourable friend just raised, and tackling fraud, because there are no ministers to attend them. The Minister says the business of House will continue. but it will not. It obviously is not doing. Committees are being cancelled. In no other workplace would such crucial work go undone. Can the Minister explain why his Prime Minister and why his party think this is acceptable?
I'd say to the Honourable Lady, as I have said before, that when it comes to the legislative business of this House, that is a matter for the Leader of the House of Commons, who holds cabinet position and who is in place, and who is, within a short period of time, due to give his regularly scheduled weekly question and answer session, and she'll be able to take advantage of that in this House.
Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has brought his office into disrepute. Our country shouldn't have to put up with him any longer. Will the Prime Minister be leaving Number 10 this weekend?
Yeah. He will need to wait for the Prime Minister's statement later today.
Janet Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Time reports this morning of Downing Street being like a bunker with gallows humour. This is no surprise, really, given the track record of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is now set on staying in post until summer. Now, if this happens, is the Minister concerned about what further damage the Prime Minister will do?
The Honourable Member will need to wait for the Prime Minister's statement later today. I cannot preempt what the Prime Minister's statement will be.
Emma Lowbat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Away from this place, our constituents are waiting for answers from this government. My constituents, Lisa and Mark Rutherford and Caroline Curry, had their precious children taken from them in the Manchester Arena terror attack. Due to archaic legislation, they can't register their deaths. The Justice Department advised an answer on a possible change to this legislation was imminent. Since the government has collapsed, who will give them an answer and when?
I'm very sorry to hear of the appalling bereavement suffered by her constituents, and it's an unimaginable loss. And I would like the Honourable Member to convey my sympathies and the sympathies of the entire government for that. With regard to her question, the functioning of government continues. The civil service supports ministers in place. Ministers are in place to support the functioning of necessary government. That will continue.
Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I point out to the Minister that we do in fact have functioning government within the United Kingdom. We have a functioning government in Edinburgh and we have a functioning government in the Senedd, in Cardiff. And where government does not function across these islands, in Westminster and in Northern Ireland, they have one thing in common, and it's the dead malign hand of this Tory government. So what possible confidence can the people of these islands, the people who want to stay in this broken union and the millions of us who don't, what confidence can we have in who is coming next? Because they all stood by and watched what this Prime Minister did for 6 months or more.
It is the Westminster government that represents this country, and the union of the United Kingdom will continue apace, despite his opposition to it.
Jill Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister praises the civil service while planning to cut 91,000 of them. I echo his praise, but they cannot be expected to cover for the lack of ministers, or for that matter, for the British people's lack of confidence in this dysfunctional government. So, will the Minister say, will the missing ministers be replaced? And does he accept that they are all tainted by the Prime Minister's disgrace, and what is needed is a fresh start?
Ministerial appointments are not a matter for me, but the functioning of government will continue apace.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 18 minutes' time, I am due to sit on the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill Committee, as set out on the order paper. The Leader of the House won't be before the Parliament at that point. There are no ministers, there is no Secretary of State, and there is a Prime Minister in office but not in government. So can the Paymaster General let me know if that committee is going ahead in now 17 minutes and when it is due to recommence, if not?
I'm unable to answer the Honourable Member's question. The committees of this House will continue in the normal way of business.
Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The majority of people who've left the government have referred to the Prime Minister's lack of integrity
honour, honesty and competence. They surely can't return to work for such a man, even on a temporary basis. So to get a functioning government, we need a full set of ministers. We need a swift transition. Will he at least convey that message to Number 10 and to his Cabinet colleagues?
It is up to each individual to decide how best to serve in government or not. And the functioning of government can and will continue. There are a multitude of ministers and a plethora of items on agendas which will continue to be dealt with the support, as I've said, of the civil service, having spoken this morning, as I've told the House, to the Cabinet Secretary.
Jim Shannon.
I wasn't here.
No. Right. There we are. Minute. We're really settled down. Right, just let everybody leave who needs to leave. We come to the next urgent question. Yvette Cooper, Shadow Home Secretary.
To ask the Minister to make a statement about the meeting between the Prime Minister and the former KGB agent Alexander Lebedev at the height of the Skripal crisis.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Alexander Lebedev is a well-known former KGB officer and also a former owner of the London Evening Standard newspaper. Yesterday, the Prime Minister told the Liaison Committee in response to questions from the Right Honourable Member for Kingston upon Hull opposite Hull North that he had met Mr Lebedev on a very few occasions. I understand that the Prime Minister also confirmed where he had met that he had met Mr Lebedev without officials present and that he had subsequently reported those meetings to officials as required. I do not have any information about the content of any discussions that may or may not have been held with Mr Lebedev. All government ministers are made fully aware of their responsibilities to safeguard national security sensitive information. It's been the long-standing policy of all governments of all colours not to comment on intelligence or national security sensitive matters, as to do so could jeopardise the very security which it is the first duty of government to protect. In response to the Salisbury attack, the UK expelled 23 Russian intelligence officers and significantly strengthened our defences against Russian interference in the United Kingdom.
Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We've sought this UQ despite the meltdown in the government because it goes to the heart of our national security. Yesterday, the Prime Minister admitted to the Home Affairs and Public Accounts Committee chairs that in April 2018, as Foreign Secretary, he met with the former KGB officer Alexander Lebedev, father of Lord Lebedev, in Italy without any officials, without any security. He went there straight from a NATO meeting where the top item on the agenda was Russia, at the height of the Salisbury poisoning crisis, after Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia had been attacked, and before Charlie Rowley and Dawn Sturgis had been exposed to the remaining Novichok. This was a chemical weapon attack by Russian agents on British soil that targeted 2 British residents, had life-changing effects for a British police officer, and killed a British citizen. On the 20th of May this year, Alexander Lebedev was sanctioned by the Canadian government, a Five Eyes partner of the UK, for being one of the 14 identified people who have directly enabled Vladimir Putin's senseless war in Ukraine and bear responsibility for the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine. The UK has not yet sanctioned him. The charges against the Prime Minister are not just about lack of integrity, they are about complete disregard for basic national security and the patriotic interests of this country. And those charges lie not just with the Prime Minister, but with all of those who have enabled him and covered up for him on this issue. So, did the Foreign Office, the Home Office and the Security Service know about this meeting in advance? Was a detailed record made after the event of the meeting? Because there are rumours that the Foreign Secretary was too drunk to properly remember. Is that true? Yeah. There are also rumours that Alexander Lebedev was trying to arrange a phone call from the meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. Is that true? Did that phone call happen? The record of ministers' interest says the Foreign Secretary accepted hospitality in Italy for himself and a guest, but he travelled home alone. Who was that guest, and did that put him in a compromising position? The Prime Minister referred yesterday to several meetings with Alexander Lebedev without officials. When were the others? Were any of them while he was Prime Minister? And the Shadow Security Minister has been asking for confirmation that this meeting happened for months. So why have Home Office Ministers, Cabinet Office Ministers and Foreign Office Ministers all been covering up? It is bad enough covering up for parties and breaking the law, but covering up over national security is a total disgrace. It puts all our safety and security at risk. It's not just the Prime Minister, it is the whole government that is letting the country down.
Staff. I'm not expecting to take everybody. It's going to be short with a lot of other business.
Mr. Speaker, I take issues of our national security extremely seriously, which is why I am at this bench today. Day after day, ministers of this government, especially those in the Foreign Office Ministers, make decisions affecting the safety and security of UK citizens, in the case of the Foreign Office Ministers, especially UK citizens overseas. On the subject of sanctions, the UK has, of course, introduced world-leading sanctions packages since Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. That is over 12,000 individuals. I cannot comment on any further sanctions, as we never comment on sanctions in advance. But I can confirm, Mr. Speaker, that since February the 24th and today, I, like other Foreign Office Ministers, have carried out my duties in signing off a number of those sanctions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last 48 hours of this hapless government have been quite disgusting to any decent person who's been submitting to the spectacle of it. And the last few years haven't been much cop either. Somebody who is deeply inappropriate for public office, not least the highest office, aided and abetted and enabled by venality and cowardice by people who are now falling over themselves to compete for sanctimony and hypocrisy. His toxic legacy will live after him. Now, we don't celebrate on these benches the departure of the Prime Minister. Like getting rid of a headache, we're just glad it's going. But his toxic legacy will live after him, and we'll all need to deal with the consequences of this disastrous administration. His toxic legacy on inflicting his disastrous Brexit on us all, asleep at the wheel over climate change and allowing a cost of living crisis to accumulate, which all of our citizens are dealing with, inaction on climate change, breaking international law over Northern Ireland. We will all of us be dealing with this thereafter. And this revelation, and I'm glad to hear the Minister takes national security seriously, and I don't doubt it.
Order. First of all, it's meant to be relevant to actually what we're debating. I've had nothing yet, and you've just lost you've used your full minute. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to actually put a question.
Forgive me, Mr. Speaker. I'm taking this stuff really seriously, and I am disgusted.
The rest of us are.
I'm trying to chime with the mood of the House rather than the government. The Minister takes national security seriously, but it's quite obvious from the Prime Minister's admission yesterday that he has serious questions to answer about it. So I appreciate the Minister's perhaps not in a position to make a proper answer, but will she at least allow the prospect of a police investigation into the Prime Minister and his influence over the influence that Russian individuals have over him, because his toxic legacy over national security cannot be something he can evade responsibility for. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I would say that, and I'll follow up as well to the answer from the Honourable Lady opposite. The Prime Minister did commit yesterday that he would follow up with the Honourable Member's question at the Liaison Committee. He did commit to that. I have asked about whether or not there is more detailed information about the discussions, but I do not have any information about the content of those discussions at this time. Thank you.
Chris Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the Minister inadvertently misled us earlier, because the Prime Minister yesterday, I was at the Liaison Committee, did not say what she said. He did not say, to the best of my memory anyway, that he had notified other officials. If he had notified other officials, surely as the Minister would understand, that meeting would have appeared on the list on the transparency records of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office for April 2018, and it is not there. So either she has misled us inadvertently today, or the Prime Minister did so perhaps more deliberately previously.
Mr. Speaker, I was obviously not at the Liaison Committee yesterday. I was, as you may know, giving the ministerial statement in order to fast-track the ratification of Finland and Sweden to joining NATO, another measure that is absolutely crucial to the safety and security here, and then later on in the Chamber ensuring that we pass the funding. In terms of the question, therefore, I can repeat again what I said in my opening words. It is my understanding that the Prime Minister confirmed that where he had met he had met Mr. Lebedev without officials present, and that he subsequently reported those meetings to officials. That is my understanding, and that is what I have been told. If that is not accurate reflection, then I do apologise, but this is not me misleading. That was what I was told. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to intelligence reports that I have seen, a serving FSB officer reported in 2017, and I quote, Alexander Lebedev is considered by the FSB to be an important asset. More recently, he has significantly expanded his businesses in occupied Crimea, pleaded with the Kremlin for economic help for occupied Crimea, and was revealed as the indirect owner of a company called Energomash, which supplies the Russian nuclear program. How is it possible for the Prime Minister to stay in office if he is conspiring with an agent of the Russian state?
Thank you very much. As the member opposite knows, I cannot comment about any potential future sanctions that may be introduced, because we never do that in advance. So I cannot give any more comment on the particular individual that is discussing. In terms of following up, because I know that the honourable previous member asked me to be more clear about what the Prime Minister said at the Liaison Committee, I have just been passed a note that apparently the Prime Minister says that he thinks he mentioned this meeting to officials. That is, I'm reporting what I have been told. Thank you.
I have to say to the Minister, it's deeply unsatisfactory that she comes to the House so ill-prepared, because this matter has been doggedly pursued by the Honourable Member for Halifax for many, many months. Can I just say to the Minister, does she agree with me that in light of the admissions that were made at the Liaison Committee yesterday, it would be wholly inappropriate for the Prime Minister, if he is about to resign, to try and stay as a caretaker Prime Minister in light of these very serious allegations that reflect on his ability to keep this country safe?
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is expected to make a statement shortly to the people of this country, and I obviously cannot comment on that in advance. I do hear what she says.
Just for my clarification, the Minister previously said we will be getting something in this House. Are we now saying it's to the people, not to this House?
I understand that he's intending to make a press statement that to the people of this country.
So not this House, I take it. That is totally not satisfactory. Alistair Cameron.
Satisfactory, Mr. Speaker, if I may. I admire your magnificent understatement there. Surely this admission, though, illustrates why this man cannot remain as Prime Minister, even as a caretaker. He is simply not to be trusted. I've seen 4 other Prime Ministers stand at that dispatch box in my time in this House, and I cannot imagine any one of them becoming involved in an enterprise such as this. The relationship with Russia goes right through this government. We were told 4 months ago that we would get the report into the golden visa schemes. We still haven't got it today. When will we see that report published? Why has it been delayed?
The visa scheme has ceased.
Directly.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, it is truly horrifying what we've heard, and deeply disturbing and worrying that the Prime Minister, then as the Foreign Secretary, met with an agent of Russia. Can I ask the Minister, because I've not actually heard this, would she actually condemn that meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say.
So, Mr. Speaker, I just need to repeat again that all government ministers are made fully aware of their responsibilities to safeguard national security sensitive information, as I am and as others are. And I cannot comment any further because I do not have any further details of this meeting. Thank you.
Dame Angela Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Minister really can't come to this House so unprepared that she can't give us any answers when the Prime Minister has now belatedly admitted that he met an agent of the Russian state whilst Foreign Secretary without any security or anyone else to listen to what he had to say to Putin's henchmen. She has now got to come to this House properly prepared and tell us why this disgraced Prime Minister has any right to stay in office a second longer, given that he is now a threat, a direct threat to our national security.
As I said earlier, I take this national security and the security of our citizens extremely seriously, which is why it is absolutely vital that the government continues to have Foreign Office ministers in place. I have inquired as to whether or not there are further details of the meetings and these alleged meetings, and I do not have any further details at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, given that the then Foreign Secretary went from the NATO meeting to these meetings, did he have any government papers with him in his possession at the time? And secondly, we know that the Prime Minister has been very careless in the past with his mobile phone number being available in public, I think for 15 years. Did he have his personal electronic devices with him at the time? And if he did, were they searched and examined by the security services after that meeting?
Mr. Speaker, as I have said again, I do not have any further details at this time. I have asked to see if there are further details, but I do not have the details at this time. The Prime Minister, however, has announced that he is stepping down and will be making a statement shortly, as we know.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why did it take until yesterday for the Prime Minister to admit that he'd met a KGB agent in secret? Will there be a published report on this matter?
Mr. Speaker, he was questioned yesterday and he answered the question yesterday. Today is today. Thank you.
Alex Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we know, the Prime Minister often goes into meetings, has conversations, and then has a lapse of memory. He had a lapse of memory after the meeting with Lebedev. Has he now recalled and informed the Minister of the conversation at that meeting? Because it's not just a national security matter, but Alexander Lebedev owns businesses in illegally occupied Crimea, which is Ukrainian, not Russian territory. So it's a matter not just for us, but also for the country of Ukraine.
Mr. Speaker, at the time, let us remember that at the time we had this devastating attack against a civilian on UK soil involving chemical weapons. That led to a massive effort by the Foreign Office to coordinate the expulsion of Russian diplomats from embassies all across the world. At this current time, the UK is also working with our allies across the world to counter Russian disinformation and to help remind the people across the world about the brutal and illegal invasion of Russia against Ukraine. In terms of the information that he requests, I do not have any further information at this time.
Cabra.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, I hope that in answer to my question and those of my colleagues, where the Minister has said she doesn't have the information at this time, I do hope we will get answers in writing in due course. But my question is, what reassurance can the Minister give us that the Prime Minister has had no meetings with any other KGB agents or other people who pose a threat to our national security?
In terms of writing, I understand that at the Liaison Committee yesterday, the Prime Minister committed to follow up in writing with the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. So there is a commitment to put information in writing, and that is important. I cannot comment on any other further meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think the Foreign Minister understands quite how serious this issue is, not only about our own national security, but at this time where Ukraine is defending its own right to its own land, it is completely undermining President Zelensky. So what analysis has her office undertaken to understand the impact of the Prime Minister's secret meetings?
So can I just say that that Russia is a top national security priority for this government. We have made huge strides to counter the threat by the Russian state. The National Security Council agreed the Russia strategy back in 2017. The government has published a full and comprehensive response to the ISC report back in January 2020, implementing a majority of the committee's recommendations. We have closed the Tier 1 visa route, a visa route which indeed was introduced, I believe, by the party opposite. We continue to call out Russian malign activities where they occur across the globe. Thank you.
Alison Thulis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Open Democracy has reported that the Conservative Party has received £62,000 in donations from Russian-linked donors since the current escalation of the conflict in Ukraine began, including a further £50,000 from Lyubov Chernukin, who is married to Putin's former Deputy Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, we know that money buys influence. What analysis has she done of the influence that buys and where it goes in national security implications?
Mr. Speaker, transparency of information about political donations is really important. Only individuals on the UK electoral roll or UK registered companies are allowed to make political donations. It is an offence for political parties and other campaigners to receive donations from impermissible sources, and that includes donations from foreign nationals living abroad. That is the law, and that is the law that all parties, including the Conservative Party, need to uphold.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, given the revelations of the last 24 hours and the suspicions which have existed for quite a number of months, if not years, why would any of our allies now share any sensitive information with us while the current Prime Minister remains in office?
Because the UK has been leading the international efforts to stand up for Ukraine against Russian aggression. That is why allies across the world have been working with the UK, because we have been helping to lead the efforts to stand up for the people of Ukraine in the attack against their sovereignty, their democracy and their freedom.
Oh, Jim Shell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That the meeting with Alexander Lebedev took place is not the issue in question. There has been much controversy surrounding the meeting. Many feel that there's a lack of detail of what took place. Can I very respectfully say to the Minister, who I have fondness for, will a full disclosure of all that has been discussed be made available with Alexander Lebedev? Will the threat to national security, given Lebedev's close links with the KGB and the Kremlin, be disclosed at the same time as well? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I cannot disclose any further information at this time. I understand members want further information. He will also recognise that we would not disclose any information that might further and that is extremely important about why we do not disclose information from time to time if it was to put people at risk. However, in answer to the questions that were asked by the Honourable Member, the Chair of the Select Committee yesterday, the Prime Minister did commit to write to her. She has that commitment from him. He has, of course, said since then that he will be stepping down and is expected to give further information on that. Thank you.
Right, just before we start business questions, I'd like to refer to the exchange between the Leader and myself last week about the Youth Parliament, that we will have to lay for the Youth Parliament, but I would like to point out that the letter from me had not arrived to the Leader's office in time before business questions. I want to clarify that he was absolutely correct on that, but I do accept that the Leader will now take it forward with great heart and I'm sure with great speed. Right, let us start with business questions. Can I come to the Shadow Leader of the House, Thangham Lebedev?
Mr. Speaker, to ask the Leader of the House if he will give us the forthcoming business.
Good luck, Leader.
Speaker, it will be a pleasure. The business for the House commencing the 11th of July will include Monday the 11th of July, consideration of a business of the House motion, followed by all stages of the Energy, Oil and Gas Profits Levy Bill, followed by a debate on motions relating to the liability of trade unions and proceedings in tort, increase of limits on damages, Order 2022, and the draft conduct of employment agencies and employment businesses amendment regulations 2022. Tuesday the 12th of July, remaining stages of the Online Safety Bill, Day 1, followed by debate on a motion on restoration and renewal of the Palace of Westminster. On Wednesday the 13th of July will be consideration in committee of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, Day 1. Thursday the 14th of July, a debate on a motion on Srebrenica, followed by a general debate on protecting and restoring nature at COP15 and beyond. The subjects for these debates were determined by the Backbench Business Committee. On Friday the 15th of July, private members' bills. The provisional business for the week commencing the 18th of July includes Monday the 18th of July, consideration in committee of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, Day 2. Tuesday the 19th of July, a conclusion of consideration in committee of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, Day 3. Wednesday the 20th of July, conclusion of remaining stages of the Online Safety Bill. And on Thursday the 20th of July, business to be determined by the Backbench Business Committee. The House will rise for the summer recess at the conclusion of business on Thursday the 21st of July and return on Monday the 5th of September.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Leader of the House for the forthcoming business, although his government is clearly not in any position to deliver it. The Prime Minister is resigning. We're hearing on Twitter there may be cabinet appointments happening, but we've had bills cancelled this morning. There is no doubt, as we have been saying for months, that this government is simply unable to govern. Inflation reaches the highest for 40 years. 59 members of the government, when I last printed out a copy of this speech, I think we're up to now, have resigned. An economic growth grinding to a halt. The Hours in Post Chancellor spending his first day on the job asking his boss to quit, not planning for how we're going to deal with the cost of living crisis. Now, as backlog Britain bulges, his Attorney General has been on television announcing her leadership bid. This is far beyond merely a distraction. This is a Tory government paralysed by sleaze and scandal, and with a shameful act of desperation, a Prime Minister dragging the country down with him as he goes, but I'm afraid to say his party has propped him up to do it. Yeah. Even if the Prime Minister is now Prime Minister in name only, and frankly that situation does need to change, there appears to be no one left to drive the work of government forward in Whitehall. Now, the Leader of the House has constantly been telling me that his government is getting on with the job. They're clearly not. We were told that appointments would be made last night. We're still waiting for ministerial posts in the Treasury. Schools, there's no one there. Justice, environment, employment, housing, levelling up, the flagship levelling up policy. Levelled to where I understand there's only one minister left standing. When will these ministers be replaced? What qualification do you now need to be a minister under this government? Who knows? Who knows? Not just unable to carry out their basic functions in Whitehall, the business of this House can't proceed. And the Right Honourable Gentleman may know that the Paymaster General referred questions about Council Bill committees to him. So I will ask him, what is happening to today's Levelling Up Bill committee that should have been going now for, I think, 12 minutes? I asked the Leader of the House, when will that be rescheduled? The Northern Ireland Cabinet Secretary resigned just a few hours ago. Where does that leave the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill? What is the plan for all of this? He's announced the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill for the 13th, 18th and 19th of July. Now, considering the seriousness of this legislation and the impact it has on our country's reputation, and the fact that this Prime Minister he is now a caretaker only, what mandate does this government have to proceed? If it's not primary legislation, it's secondary. During the passage of the Building Safety Bill, the Minister admitted there were unresolved issues that needed statutory instruments passing to protect leaseholders. Is there anyone who can sign these SIs? Mr Speaker, in excruciating liaison committee appearance yesterday, the Prime Minister admitted that he'd met the former KGB agent with links to Putin without officials present in Italy when he was the Foreign Secretary. Now, I'm glad that my right honourable friend was able to ask questions, with your permission this morning, Mr Speaker, but not a single one was answered. Yep. Now, this is on security, Mr Speaker. If my right honourable friend is not able to get answers to questions when there was a context of a chemical weapons attack on British soil in which British people died, how is this a government that is functioning? And I ask the Leader of the House, with the greatest respect, can he tell us how does any of this look like a functioning government? Yeah. Now, week after week, the Leader has failed to answer my very specific questions on the appointment of a new ethics advisor. Now, given the new revelations, just the new ones regarding Lebedev, surely the Leader of the House could agree with me today and hopefully answer my question today that a new ethics advisor is needed. Could he tell us when will this vacancy be filled, and can he guarantee that investigations ongoing prior to Lord Geit's resignation will be completed? Because, Mr Speaker, the first duty of any government, as we all know, is to keep its people safe. When the Security Minister resigns on the morning, we cannot allow this to drift into evening, let alone the weekend, and for this Conservative Party to continue to put national security at risk. Every single Tory MP, every single one, should take a long, hard look in the mirror, ask themselves how we got here with a government that's collapsed before our eyes, putting the British people through an excruciating and dangerous act of desperation, with a caretaker Prime Minister, as my honourable friend has said, is even more dangerous as a caretaker than an actual Prime Minister. I may disagree with the Leader of the House politically, but I have huge respect for his office and for that of the Prime Minister. But, Mr Speaker, they propped him up, they were complicit, they have overseen 12 years of stagnation, declining public services and empty promises. We need a fresh start with the Labour government.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I think that there's a very clear difference between the two sides of this dispatch box. Now is the moment for calmness and for professionalism, not for ranting and not for overexcitement. Can I start, Mr Speaker, by saying the Honourable Lady mentioned national security. I think before we proceed, we should just recognise that it is the 15th anniversary of the 7/7 bombings. The Home Secretary is the Minister responsible for national security. She is in office. She is still the Home Secretary. She is in control of our national security, and there is no issue over our national security at any level at this moment in time. She mentioned the business. I presented the business of the House here this morning. That business will be delivered. That programme for the next 2 weeks. There are ministers in place to deliver that. And I would just gently say to her, she said, how are we going to proceed with the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill? Well, actually, we've concluded the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill in this House. If she paid attention, that bill is now concluded. I would say she's very concerned about legislation. There were only 4 members of the opposition in this House to debate that motion. That's how seriously they take the troubles in Northern Ireland. There were 0 Liberal Democrats. Only 4 of them could be bothered to turn up to debate that. She mentioned Salisbury and the issue over the chemical weapons. She supported a leader of the opposition who wanted to send the evidence back to Russia for them to consider. Just pause for a moment and think about who she supported at that moment in time. And I think we've got. It's all right heckling and saying we've got nothing to say. We're getting on with the business of government in a calm way. There are some bill committees that will not run today, but they'll be back up and running very soon. And she finally finished with Lord Geit. I declare my interest, Mr. Speaker, at the beginning of that, in that I'm assured that there are processes in place and those matters will continue to be reviewed and the results of those will come forward very soon.
Just right, darling.
Mr. Speaker, as the Leader of the House continues to have confidence in the Prime Minister, my question requires a simple answer. Does the Leader of the House agree with the Prime Minister that if a complaint is raised against a Member of Parliament that is so grave that it triggers an investigation, that that Member of Parliament or Minister should not be promoted or continue on the front bench? So my question to the Leader of the House is simple. Does he agree with the Prime Minister?
Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure how that question is relevant to the business of the House in any way, shape or form, but if the Honourable Lady wanted to apply for an adjournment debate on any matter, she'd be welcome to.
Can I just say, those who were late, please don't embarrass me by standing. Can we now come to the SNP spokesperson? We're all waiting for Pete Wishart.
And we will certainly can, Mr. Speaker, and thank you ever so much. And he's away, and hasn't the Leader of the House been curiously quiet over the course of the past 24 hours? One of the few Johnson loyalists that was left standing last night, I thought we might have found him chained to the radiator with his beloved Prime Minister in the bunker this morning. But can I reassure him, he's a rank outsider to follow his Prime Minister. I think he's something like 80 to 1 just now to take over for the Prime Minister, but I think that's even a long shot even for him. But what a mess they have made of this. This is a Prime Minister who can't even leave the scene without almost burning the house down. He's the first Prime Minister in history who, when receiving that tap on the shoulder from the men in grey suits, told them to go and get stuffed. Surely there is no way on earth that he can remain in a position as any sort of caretaker, particularly with all the big issues that we have to consider and address as we go through the summer period. He's more an undertaker than a caretaker. And what a joke, can I say to the Leader of the House, of a business statement this is, with a government at half capacity. There's barely enough ministers to respond to debates and to answer the questions, and business has been cancelled for the rest of the day. What happens to all these vacant positions? Will they all now return to the post? Does the Levelling Up Secretary now get his job back? And Mr. Speaker, we need to debate this Prime Minister's legacy, because he will go down in history as one of the worst Prime Ministers in history at one of the worst possible times. In just 3 years, he's managed to decimate our international reputation, our economy and our democracy. He will be the 4th Prime Minister in 6 years. Maybe the problem isn't quite with whoever leads the shower over there. And people ask us, why do we want independence for Scotland? Well, I'm not asking that this morning. Independence would mean we would never get another Prime Minister who we never voted like him ever again. And isn't it funny, the man that's trashed so much of the democracy in the UK, one of his last acts was to write to our First Minister to try and deny democracy to our nation. He's now gone, Scotland will soon be gone too.
Well, Mr. Speaker, once again, there was not much in there that was relevant to the business of the House, but we await the Prime Minister's statement this afternoon. I can assure the honourable gentleman that vacant positions will be refilled as the reshuffle progresses today and tomorrow, and the government will continue to function in a professional way and deliver for the people of the United Kingdom.
Andrew Selou.
Mr. Speaker, can we have an urgent debate in government time, because I've already had a debate in Westminster Hall, on increasing general practice capacity where we have huge increases in population. The leader, I think, has similar issues that I have in my constituency. They exist all over the country, and I think it would show to our constituents that, notwithstanding what has gone on over the last few days, the government gets this, they take the issue seriously, and that serious work will go on this issue over the next few weeks and months.
Leader.
Right, thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I pay tribute to my honourable friend who's done a lot of work on this matter and pay tribute to his leadership on this. He'll be aware that we are investing £1.5 billion to create an extra 50 million GP appointments by 2024. We want people to feel confident that when they have a problem, they can see a GP face to face, but I think it is something which is worthy of further debate, and I know my honourable friend will continue to press. I would encourage him to seek a debate in this House.
Yeah. Ian Mearns, Chair of the Backbench Committee.
Very grateful, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Leader of the House for announcing the Business and the Backbench Business Committee debates for the 14th of July. And can I also give the House notice that on the 21st of July, which has been allocated to the committee, that it would be our proposal in the first half of the day to have a debate on United Kingdom sanctions for human rights abuses and corruption. And Mr Speaker, for quite a few years, the final Thursday before the summer recess has been a time which, when allowed, has been allocated to a debate on matters to be raised before the forthcoming summer adjournment. And the committee has agreed that it would be a fitting tribute to name this debate after Sir David Amess, who was truly taken from us last October. So our proposal is that this tribute would see the debate renamed the Sir David Amess Summer Adjournment Debate. Sir David was renowned amongst our colleagues for his regular appearances at our committee and his impressive contributions to pre-recess adjournment debates. So, Mr Speaker, the Backbench Business Committee would like to honour his memory by naming the debate after him. I've raised this matter briefly in the House after Sir David's loss and had the support of the then Leader of the House. And, Mr Speaker, I've written to the Chair of the Procedure Committee, to yourself and to the Leader to this effect.
Well, Mr Speaker, can I pay tribute to the honourable gentleman and to his committee for the work that they do. Thank him for announcing the debate that he mentioned, and also from the dispatch box offer my full support to his recommendation to call the debate the David Amess debate. I'd be delighted. I hope I have the opportunity to respond to him in that and other members in that debate, and I think it's a very fitting tribute that he's introduced.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I know this may seem very mundane given the drama that's happening around us, but it's very important to my constituents. We've got several fantastic sustainable businesses, and I recently met with Kit Change, who make leggings and sporting tops out of plastic bottles that have been recycled, and Third Rock, who make sustainable activewear for climbing out of old carpets and discarded fishing nets, which is really important. But in my discussions with them, we've talked about the challenges and opportunities they face, in particular in relation to financing their small businesses. Please could we have a debate in this House about financing for small business who focus on sustainability and ethical sourcing of products?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question, and I would say it's not a trivial matter. I think the businesses up and down this country are the backbone of our economy. The government provides extensive business support for small and medium-sized enterprises, including sustainable businesses. The British Business Bank programmes are supporting over 1.77 million smaller businesses with £89 billion worth of finance. And I know she'll have the opportunity at Bay's questions next week if she wanted to highlight the fantastic recyclable business that she has in her constituency.
John Pryor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I associate myself with the comments made a few minutes ago about David Amess, my former neighbour, David Amess. One of the many consequences of rising energy prices is that hundreds of swimming pools in this country face closure in the next few months. This has been raised this morning under DCMS questions, but it's not technically really a question for the Culture, Media and Sport Department. It's more Treasury and Energy. Now, if we have got any ministers left, by the way, in those departments, could we have a statement on how this crisis, potential crisis, will be tackled with all the implications for future generations?
Leader. Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. It is a very important one. I have swimming pools in my own constituency that are struggling with the rising cost of global energy. It's something that the government understands and takes very seriously. That's why we've poured billions of pounds in of support. I hope the local authorities can find it in their within their means to help and support those swimming pools that are under pressure, but there may be the opportunity at Bay's questions under the energy portfolio to raise that next week at Bay's questions.
Sir Matthew Waffle.
Mr Speaker, the 7th of July remains a very painful day for many Londoners. It's 17 years since 52 of them were murdered in London. 5 of those victims were actually people who had direct connections with Hendon, and include one of them, Anthony Fattier Williams, walked past me just 2 hours before his death. But, Mr Speaker, my constituent, 9-year-old Precious, has a neurodegenerative disease resulting in complex health conditions, including scoliosis. Her medical team have advised that she needs an operation to insert maggot rods into her spine to correct this. The use of these rods was suspended in 2020 due to safety concerns. However, their use has now been cleared for procedures in places including the United States and other countries, as a modified version has been implemented. Precious's family and the spinal team at Great Ormond Street have been waiting for over 6 months for the MHRA's approval. Can we have a minister come to the dispatch box and update us on the progress of approving this desperately needed technology for my constituent?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable gentleman and join him in paying tribute to the victims of the 7/7. I think I may have inadvertently said the 15th anniversary. It is right, it is the 17th anniversary. Just turning to Precious, I'm sure that the whole House sends our best wishes to Precious, and I can assure the honourable gentleman that the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency are taking this matter very seriously. I understand he has written to the MHRA's Chief Executive, and they will be providing a full written response in due course.
Session Lerman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I associate myself with the Leader of the House remarks on the 17th anniversary of the 7/7 bombings and remembering the 52 victims who died, and just a reminder that London will never be cowed by terrorism. At a time when we need stability across the government, we are seeing that the Minister for Policing has been appointed to another role. The fact that the Met Police, along with 6 other police forces, are in special measures does not give my constituents in Vauxhall the confidence that this government is stable. Can the Leader of the House please outline when we will get a reappointment in that important post?
The Highs.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her question and for her comments about 7/7 and recognise the cross-party support on matters of national security. I can assure her that a reshuffle is taking place, is my understanding, that that's a very important role and will be filled very soon, and I'm sure then she'll be able to question the new Minister in due course.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Of course, as we commemorate the terrorist attacks on London, people should remember that the day before was a day of great joy, when London had been awarded the Olympics, and it was then tinged with sadness because of the terrorist atrocities that took place the following day. Over the course of the pandemic, the Department for Transport have continued to bail out Transport for London to cover the cost of the loss of income on fares. However, the Department have refused, quite rightly, to cover the cost of the Mayor of London not doing what he should have done in dealing with TfL's finances. Now, the current deal, Mr Deputy Speaker, runs out, I believe, next weekend. We desperately need an announcement from the Department of Transport for what's going to happen after next weekend in terms of financing for London Transport, because we cannot have a position continuing where the Mayor of London refuses to take the action that is required to reduce costs.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question and recognise that the challenge that Londoners will face if that transport system does not operate. He's right to draw attention to the amount of support that the government has offered, and he's also right to hold the Mayor of London to account. I will pass on his comments directly to the Secretary of State, but I hope that the London Mayor will take firm action, get a grip of transport for London and not rely upon the cash from the government that he's requesting.
Chris Bryant. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. All of the events of today sort of started with the Prime Minister throwing the kitchen sink at trying to preserve Owen Paterson in post, which of course the Leader of the House was instrumental in as well. The Standards Committee has produced a new code of conduct. It's ready to go. We've published it. We've also published a new procedural protocol, which would put in place, although there has been a sort of form of appeal in the past, a formal appeal through the independent expert panel, which is chaired by High Court Judge Sir Stephen Irwin. We can't use that, including for new cases, unless the government tables the motions, and I had hoped that we'd be doing that before the summer recess. I would urge him to think again about the last week and whether there's a means of us doing it before the summer recess, because otherwise there's a real danger that we'll be in legal jeopardy because we won't know how to deal with an individual case that might come along, which might be just as serious as that of Owen Paterson.
Well, I thank the Honourable Gentleman for the work that he's done and for the work of the committee. We had the final reports, I think, late last week, which the government is now considering. I know he's very keen to move forward, as is the government. I don't think it will be possible to have that debate before the summer recess, but what I'm happy to do is sit down with him at some point over the next week or to try and arrange a time which we can plan our way forward.
Daniel Kaczynski.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This year alone, my right honourable friend will know that we're spending nearly £190 billion of taxpayers' money on the NHS. Spending on the health service is increasing every year as a percentage of overall government spending. We're very proud in Shropshire. And my right honourable friend, the member for Ludlow, and I secured £312 million for major modernisation of our local A&E services. Not a penny of that money has been spent 4 years after we have secured it. Can we have a debate in government time about the quality and efficacy of various levels of NHS management? Because certainly in my trust, I am starting to lose confidence in them.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question and pay tribute to the work that he does holding local health authorities to account in Shropshire. He'll be aware that the government has introduced a £39 billion package through the Health and Social Care levy. That is a huge investment in our health services, but he is right to highlight that also has to go hand in hand with reform and restructure to make sure that that taxpayers' money is invested properly and is spent efficiently.
Harry Sherman.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, can I ask the Leader of the House if he will, of course he knows more about what's been going on in Number 10 and in the government than anyone else, but will he take seriously the fact this is a national crisis and a national emergency, and perhaps pro tem, just for the next 2 weeks and through the recess, there should be some serious cooperation between the opposition and the government front benches in order to serve the national purpose. And would he also, and I don't know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, how we do this, when dear David was killed and when Joe was killed, I had the assurance that their families would be well looked after. Evidence has come to me that that isn't the case. Could we have a proper way of finding out how we look after the families of victims killed when they're doing their job as parliamentarians? Because what I've heard recently is not very, reflects very poorly on this House.
The House.
Well, I thank him for his question. I'm more than happy to pursue that away from the dispatch box if he wants to raise that with me privately and send me the information that he's in possession of. I think clearly there is a responsibility for us to look after families of those people who sadly were murdered brutally. I think it's also worth just reaffirming that there are support mechanisms out there for security, and I know through the Speaker's office and through the security services within the House of Commons, if any members are concerned about their own security or that of their family, there is support out there.
Alison Thewlis.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. At the Treasury Select Committee on the 6th of June, the now former Chancellor promised action in weeks on what he called the extraordinary profits of electricity generators, sparking significant uncertainty in renewables investment in Scotland. There is nothing in the business statement presented today which deals with this proposal. So before recess, so can the Leader of the House restore confidence and help Scotland's net zero ambitions by confirming that the current government won't go ahead with these half-baked plans?
Leader of the House.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for a question. Of course, we have announced the oil and gas levy bill, which is coming to the House very soon, so she'll have the opportunity in that debate to question the Minister at the dispatch box. But I think we can afford a little time for the new Chancellor of the Exchequer to find his feet and to come to the House, and I'm sure she'll have the opportunity to question him when he does.
Terry McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I shouldn't actually be here at the moment. I should be in the Bill Committee of the Genetic Technology Precision Breeding Bill. Unfortunately, we lost the Minister yesterday. We have a new Minister who is even now swatting up ferociously for this afternoon session, but it's an incredibly technical bill, and it's not a very well drafted bill. It's very flawed. Does the Leader of the House really think that that Minister, no disrespect to her, but that she's going to be in a position to take us through the remaining stages of committee by this afternoon?
So I thank the Honourable Lady for a question. The Bill Committee will meet at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I can assure her that the Minister of State in that department is very informed on this matter, is right across the detail of that, and I'm sure the Bill Committee will proceed with great speed at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Ian Paisley.
Yeah, very much, Speaker. I welcome the fact that the business leader has not listed any business on the Northern Ireland Protocol for the 12th of July, given that there will be celebrations about the Glorious Revolution taking place on that day. And a number of Northern Ireland members would not be available, but I do welcome the fact that he has listed for 3 days, 13th, 18th and 19th. Can I confirm that as personalities are changing at the top, that the policy on this matter, the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, will not change, and it is the government's intention to complete this business by the end of this particular session? And could I recommend to him the evidence that the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee received from the renowned international law expert Professor Alan Boyle of Edinburgh Law School, where he confirmed that all of his advice to the government is that the Protocol Bill does not breach international law?
Well, I can assure the honourable gentleman that the bill will continue on the dates that have been announced. He'll be aware it is a Foreign Office bill, and the Foreign Secretary remains very much in her place, and I hope he'll be in his place to scrutinise the bill as it progresses.
Marshall Kutova.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And can I associate myself with the comments made earlier by the Leader of the House and many other members across this House on the 17th anniversary of the 7/7 terror attacks? Mr Deputy Speaker, for the good of this country, we need a functioning government, and at this precise moment, we do not have one. There are many government departments that is without ministers. And now I have met with many ministers over the past months, and also have written correspondence to them on very important matters that matter to the people of Battersea. So can the Leader of the House give me some assurance that I will get responses at the earliest opportunity and in a timely way, please?
Well, I can offer the honourable lady that assurance. There are ministers being appointed as we speak. Those vacancies will be filled, and she will get a timely response, and her constituents will receive the service that they deserve.
Vera Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. In Bath, we have soaring ambulance waiting times, NHS dentists and GPs in crisis, and a cost of living emergency bringing misery to scores of my constituents. There is no functioning government left. How is it possible that the Prime Minister can continue in office even as a caretaker amidst the chaos that he has created himself? Will he bring forward a debate and vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister?
Well, it's good to see the honourable lady back in her place for business questions. I know she's missed a couple, and I hope she's now well. I can assure her that there is a functioning government. The government, there are a few vacancies that are currently being filled. They'll be filled very soon, and level of service will continue at the high level it has for some time.
Jake Twigg. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Consensus Leader of the House, in view of the Secretary of State for Defence's comments to the Defence-led committee this week on the ongoing situation in Ukraine, can we have an urgent debate in government time to examine the need to increase defence spending and defence personnel?
Well, the honourable gentleman will be aware of the commitment we've made for extra cash for Ukraine and for the security the security situation. I hope he would recognise that that warfare is changing, and that the requirements of the MOD have changed over the last few decades, and that's why the MOD are reviewing what their requirements are. We have a Secretary of State currently who's very much across his brief and is very much in place and will remain so for the near future.
Stephen Doughty.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Before the chaos of the last 24 hours, I had been promised a meeting with the former Secretary of State for levelling up housing and communities and local government over the issues affecting my constituents in Cardiff South and Penarth relating to fire and building safety defects and the lack of cooperation there's been with the Welsh Government about commitments from developers that were done on an England-only basis rather than a UK-wide basis to remedy those defects. Would he be able to assist in getting me a meeting with whoever is newly appointed to that role? These are really serious issues affecting thousands of people.
Well, I don't know if the honourable gentleman is aware, but the member for Tunbridge Wells has been appointed to that Secretary of State role. I shall pass on his comments directly to him and make sure that we can arrange a meeting for him with the department as soon as possible.
Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. If the Prime Minister is permitted to remain in post until October following a leadership election, this means that the governance of the UK will be in a state of paralysis until that time, with over 25 ministerial vacancies and important bill committees cancelled across the House today. Indeed, it seems that the Prime Minister is still only supported by political giants such as the Honourable Lady for Mid-Bedfordshire and the Honourable Gentleman for Dumfries and Galloway. No wonder the people of Scotland are deciding in increasing numbers that they are better off taking their future into their own hands. But will the Leader of the House make a statement setting out the importance of a Prime Minister who has lost the support of his own MPs and is now unable to govern to resign immediately so that an interim Prime Minister can be appointed?
Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, I understand the Prime Minister is going to make a statement later and we await that statement with anticipation to see what is said, but I can assure her that government will continue to work away. She says that a number of committees have been cancelled. Actually, some of them have just been rearranged and will continue in the usual way.
Ruth Cadbury.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I also want to associate myself with the remarks about Hounslow Council lost a wonderful social worker, Ajaro Ikiagwu, on that day. One of the key tasks of government are the basic functions that currently seem to be collapsing. For example, and just examples, the issuing of visas and passports. And members are not getting answers. So can the Leader of the House explain how the basic parliamentary tools of scrutiny will be addressed, such as answers getting written answers to questions, whether oral or written, where there are either no ministers or these ministers are so new they're going to take time to get their feet under the table?
Well, the Honourable Lady will be aware that the ministers, where there is a vacancy, those ministers will be appointed very soon, that the function of those departments will be up and running very quickly. And I can assure her that there are many talented people on the benches behind me that will be able to take up those roles. Well, they're probably all waiting by their phones, but I can assure her that once they're in place, they'll be ready to give her the level of service that she requires.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Deputy Speaker, after the wholly unsatisfactory response from the Minister this morning to the urgent question from the Shadow Home Secretary about the meeting with former KGB officer Alexander Lebedev on the 28th of April 2018 with the then Foreign Secretary, now Prime Minister, could the Leader please arrange for a fully briefed Minister to attend this House on Monday to give a statement to set out the facts of what happened and who was told, particularly in light of what appears to be a clear breach of the ministerial code and potentially a criminal offence being committed?
Into the House.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. As she made reference to, there was an urgent question this morning. There are matters of national security that are pertinent to this, and not all of those matters of national security can be vocalised from the dispatch box due to their sensitivity, but I will make sure I pass on her comments to the relevant department, and I'm sure they'll respond in due course.
Vindu Mishra.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I was pleased to recently learn that Davenport Station in my constituency is to be finally awarded access for all funding to make accessibility improvements. However, Stockport Station, which had almost 4.5 million passengers per annum pre-pandemic, still requires significant capital investment to ensure it is safe and accessible for all. It is the 5th busiest station in Greater Manchester, but unfortunately we have leaky roofs which often cause platforms to be unsafe and lifts are out of use. If there are any ministers left in the Department for Transport, will the Leader of the House allocate government time for a debate on train stations across Greater Manchester to address these serious health and safety issues as well as accessibility issues?
Well, I pay tribute to the honourable gentleman for raising the matter. I think disability access to our stations is very important. That's why the Department of Transport have invested millions of pounds in our rail infrastructure up and down the country. He'll have the opportunity in September at Transport Questions to raise that again. I think Transport Questions on the 15th of September. But I know from my own constituency there are a number of challenges with railway stations that do need improvements to allow disability access.
Deirdre Brock.
Deputy Speaker. Open Democracy tells us 18 ministers have refused to publish official diaries of the meetings they held during the pandemic, and those include those of the Health Secretary and the Prime Minister. Yet the new Chancellor tells us we'll see evidence and transparency from the ministerial team and the Prime Minister in the future. Can we have a statement about the importance of the government ensuring evidence and transparency in governmental business, that government ministers' diaries are made available to the public for scrutiny, and also that distinctions between official, political and personal meetings are properly defined for the future?
Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Lady will be aware that there are very strict rules around these sorts of declarations. I don't think it is possible to publish diaries of all ministers. There are security implications in publishing specific diary engagements on a regular basis, particularly for some ministers that have security briefs. But there are very strict rules around what should be declared and the timelines of when they should be declared.
Alex Sobel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As we know, it's the end of days for this Prime Minister. It's also the end of days for this parliamentary session before summer recess. The Leader of the House might not have seen the Leader of the Opposition interview the BBC this morning where he said if the Conservative Party don't get rid of the Prime Minister shortly, Labour will in the national interest bring a no confidence vote because this can't go on. Will the Leader of the House guarantee that the 21st of July will be the last day of this session, or will he try and bring that forward to avoid such a vote?
Yeah.
The House. Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, I've announced the business for the next 2 weeks. The House will rise on the 21st of July. We await the Prime Minister's statement this afternoon. I'm not about to preempt what he may or may not say, but I can assure the honourable gentleman that the functions of government continue and will continue to move forward.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The PCS Union are opposing the closure of Toxteth Job Centre in my Liverpool Riverside constituency, along with other centres nationally, and also challenging the proposed 91,000 job cuts across the wider civil service and the attacks on pay terms and conditions across government departments. Will the Leader of the House grant an urgent debate in government time so we can scrutinise government plans to negotiate with PCS to avoid centre closures and attacks on pay and conditions?
Well, of course, the Honourable Lady is perfectly at liberty to apply for a Westminster Hall debate or an adjournment debate on that matter. I think it is worth recognising that there is huge global inflationary pressure, and we must, as a government, act responsibly with fiscal responsibility to make sure that we do not add to that inflationary pressure, and that is going to require some pay restraint across the country.
Barry Gardner.
Last week, I raised at Business Question the issue of redundancies in the Royal Mail. And I want to apologise to you, Mr Deputy Speaker, that I said there were 1,400 agreed redundancies and 900 that were in dispute. I believe I may have inadvertently misled the House in that the actual figures are 1,250 redundancies at Royal Mail that were achieved and 542 that are in dispute. The Leader of the House was good enough last week to say that he would raise the matter of the disruption to service with the Secretary of State for Business, who I understand is still in his post. Has he done so? And if so, are we going to get the urgent statement from the Business Secretary about the disruption that is currently happening to postal services across the country?
Leader of the House.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The direct answer is yes, I have written to the Secretary of State. I hope he will get a copy of that, if he's not already, of my letter in his inbox very soon. I know Royal Mail have also written to him, I think, directly, but I've not had a response yet from the Secretary of State. If I get one before he does, then I shall forward it to him.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Greater than the crisis in Downing Street is the crisis we're seeing currently in the Donbass and across Ukraine. However, the Prime Minister remaining in office is playing into Putin's hands and undermining President Zelensky. So will he convey my concern and that of many other members to the Prime Minister that he can't continue in office if he wants to support the people of Ukraine and therefore bring a statement to this House about the impact of his behaviours on our foreign policy?
Leader of the House.
Well, I mean, I gently say to the Honourable, number one, we await the Prime Minister's statement this afternoon. I don't want to preempt what he may or may not.
Freddie. Right, I need to... Freddie, can we get it centred on the door? Is your remote focused? Be alright, be alright. That's not the lowest it could go. Yeah, can we get it out?
You need a bit that way, don't you? Ready?
Turn it a little bit. Okay, I'm going to sit.
Ready? This is the main camera. If you need to... They need it a bit that way. No, slide it that way. Just go. Speak to him.
I don't know how to get that sharp. I mean, is that really sharp? Still got no sound, Brad. I'm going to be hit. Are you okay behind me? I'll try to stay as low as I can.
Good, okay. Toby, good? Right.
1, 2. Are you guys happy with the audio? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good stuff? Good stuff.
This is an audio test through the lectern. Hopefully the voice is audible through the speakers. This is an audio test from the lectern. Hopefully this is audible through the speakers as well. This is a test through the speakers as well as the distribution amplifier.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you. It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. And I've agreed with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of our backbench MPs, that the process of choosing that new leader should begin now. And the timetable will be announced next week. And I've today appointed a cabinet to serve, as I will, until a new leader is in place. So I want to say to the millions of people who voted for us in 2019, many of them voting Conservative for the first time, thank you for that incredible mandate, the biggest Conservative majority since 1987, the biggest share of the vote since 1979. And the reason I have fought so hard in the last few days to continue to deliver that mandate in person was not just because I wanted to do so, but because I felt it was my job, my duty, my obligation to you to continue to do what we promised in 2019. And of course, I'm immensely proud of the achievements of this government, from getting Brexit done to settling our relations with the continent for over half a century, reclaiming the power for this country to make its own laws in Parliament, getting us all through the pandemic, delivering the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, the fastest exit from lockdown, and in the last few months, leading the West in standing up to Putin's aggression in Ukraine. And let me say now to the people of Ukraine that I know that we in the UK will continue to back your fight for freedom, for as long as it takes. And at the same time, in this country, we've been pushing forward a vast programme of investment in infrastructure and skills and technology, the biggest in a century, because if I have one insight into human beings, it is that genius and talent and enthusiasm and imagination are evenly distributed throughout the population, but opportunity is not. And that's why we must keep levelling up, keep unleashing the potential of every part of the United Kingdom. And if we can do that in this country, we will be the most prosperous in Europe. And in the last few days, I've tried to persuade my colleagues that it would be eccentric to change governments when we're delivering so much, and when we have such a vast mandate, and when we're actually only a handful of points behind in the polls, even in mid-term after quite a few months of pretty relentless sledging, and when the economic scene is so difficult domestically and internationally. And I regret not to have been successful in those arguments, and of course it's painful not to be able to see through so many ideas and projects myself. But as we've seen at Westminster, the herd instinct is powerful. When the herd moves, it moves. And my friends, in politics, no one is remotely indispensable. And our brilliant and Darwinian system will produce another leader equally committed to taking this country forward through tough times, not just helping families to get through it, but changing and improving the way we do things, cutting burdens on businesses and families, and yes, cutting taxes, because that is the way to generate the growth and the income we need to pay for great public services. And to that new leader, I say, whoever he or she may be, I say I will give you as much support as I can. And to you, the British public, I know that there will be many people who are relieved, and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world. But them's the breaks. I want to thank Carrie and our children and all the members of my family who have had to put up with so much for so long. I want to thank the peerless British civil service for all the help and support that you have given our police, our emergency services, and of course our fantastic NHS, who at critical moment helped to extend my own period in office, as well as our armed services and our agencies that are so admired around the world, and our indefatigable Conservative Party members and supporters, whose selfless campaigning makes our democracy possible. I want to thank the wonderful staff here at Chequers, here at Number 10, and of course at Chequers, and our fantastic prop force detectives, the one group, by the way, who never leak. Above all, I want to thank you, the British public, for the immense privilege that you have given me. And I want you to know that from now on until the new Prime Minister is in place, your interests will be served and the government of the country will be carried on. Being Prime Minister is an education in itself. I've travelled to every part of the United Kingdom, and in addition to the beauty of our natural world, I found so many people possessed of such boundless British originality and so willing to tackle old problems in new ways that I know that even if things can sometimes seem dark now, our future together is golden. Thank you all very much. Thank you.